Okay, so I had a guy hop on my post and randomly felt the need to tell me that 50% of Black women have genital herpes and are out of the sex game. And his stats were from the 2010 CDC. Now, it just so happens that I have a biology degree and I also worked in a pharmacy for 5 years. So I have extensive knowledge about not just herpes, but STDs, STIs in general. So we're going to talk about this. This is actually one of my absolute favorite topics because a lot of people are extremely ignorant about the topic of STDs and STIs. In case you do not know, a sexually transmitted disease is something that is either bacterial or is something that you can get rid of. An STI is a sexually transmitted infection. It is something that you cannot get rid of and that you have it for life. Herpes is indeed an STI. It is something that you cannot get rid of. It is non-fatal, except if you are a newborn and you have not built up the antibodies for it. That is the only way that the herpes virus is fatal. But there's a lot of stigmas around the virus. So we're going to talk about those today in this video. It's also important to notice that there are different types of herpes. Is herpes simplex 1, which is a cold sore around the mouth, which herpes simplex virus 1 can be transferred to the genitalia area, which will cause herpes simplex virus type 2 or HSV. But as you can see, according to the CDC, this says that the age-adjusted percentage of persons in the United States affected with HSV is actually on a decrease. But it also says that it is estimated that 87% of 14 to 49-year-olds are infected with HSV2 and have never received a clinical diagnosis. So we're going to talk about why they have not received a clinical diagnosis for their possible having herpes virus. So for starters, herpes is not included in the regular STD panel. So if you go to the doctor and say you want to be checked for everything, they're going to check you. They're going to check you for STDs, but what they're not going to check you for is HIV. They're not going to check you for hepatitis. They're not going to check you for genital warts. They're not going to check you for herpes. Okay, so those are the four most common STIs that if you go to the doctor thinking you're getting tested for STDs, those are not included in the standard STD panel when you go and ask them to get tested. A lot of people do not know this. When you go to the doctor, you have to ask for a full STD panel in order for them to test you for those things. You have to specifically tell them that you want to be tested for HIV, you want to be tested for herpes, you want to be tested for genital warts and hepatitis. So if you have never asked your doctor to test you for those, then you have never been tested for those STIs, which means you could have it and not know it. So this is why I love this topic, because people think that talking about STDs is taboo when it's really just being a mature adult and talking about it. And secondly, I actually know people who have herpes and they tell their prospects that they have herpes. Some of them have gotten married despite telling their partners that they have herpes. And then also, when a woman tells a man, hey, I have herpes or I have warts, men do not care. I cannot tell you how many stories I have heard from women who be like, I told him I had herpes or I told him I had warts. He didn't care. He still wanted to have sex with me. In fact, that is the only time a man will willingly put on a condom is if he knows the woman has an STD. Other than that, y'all don't want to wear them. And we also know that men are least likely to go to the doctor, and they sure as hell ain't asking for full STD panels. The only reason this is high for Black women is because women from the age of 15 on up and through adulthood, we have to get what's called an annual pap smear. So because we automatically have to go to the doctor at least once a year, that's the only reason our stuff is being reported and is in those numbers. We also know that Black women only sleep and date with Black men. 98% of Black women only sleep with Black men. So I love how the fact that you're putting it out there that black women have herpes. Well, who did we get it from, boo boo? They're getting it from black men. So that's the irony of your comment. And I also want to put it out there that because I've actually studied the herpes virus when I was working in a pharmacy, I did it as part of my continuing education to keep my pharmacy technician license going. You have to do continuing education and get those credits. I chose the herpes simplex virus. That's why I know so much about this. Also, when you get the herpes virus, the majority of people who get the herpes virus, they have their initial outbreak and they never have another outbreak. That's why they don't know that they have it, but they're still spreading it to other people. So even though you are not having an actual outbreak of the herpes virus, so if you're looking at your partners combing through their lips and all this other stuff trying to look for herpes, you're not going to necessarily see it, but they could be undergoing what's called viral shedding. Okay? For those of you who are not familiar with viral shedding, that is the time where you are susceptible to get herpes from your partner, even though they are not showing any symptoms. You can pause and read the definition of viral shedding right here. So this is why a lot of women have decided to just not date. This is why a lot of women have been celibate for 10 years or more. And this is why it's like, no, black women are not out of the game because 50% have herpes. Despite the fact that the majority of people either have HSV1 or HSV2. On top of that, there's different types of herpes. If you've ever had chicken pox, guess what? You have herpes. If you are older and you are now getting shingles, guess what? Shingles is another form of herpes. So there's like 11 different types of herpes. Herpes. There's nothing wrong with this virus. So we need to start having mature conversations about these STDs and STIs, especially since you guys are going to foreign countries and having threesomes and foursomes with these women. You're probably not using protection because you don't even like using protection at home. So you probably feel even more untouchable when you're overseas and you're spreading these diseases to the women over there. So I'm like, what are we really talking about here? Who gives a shit if 50% of black women have herpes? The majority of people have herpes, and most of you motherfuckers don't even know that you have it, but you're a carrier and you're spreading it around to other people, especially those Filipino women.